Now, Emile Smith-Rowe, as you know, he's a very talented player. He come from Haylen's Academy. He wears the number 10. He's contracted until 2026. And I think he's personally the forgotten hero at the Emirates. Now, as Arteta said, and we're going to go over his comments, it's about what you're doing now, not in the past. He's had an injury hit season. And I think we should stand by him because I think the qualities are there. He can play as a left-sided midfielder, can play as an 8. It didn't work, but Arteta experimented with him as a false 9 against Villarreal. Clearly at home on the left or right-hand side of an 8, or better yet, learning to play there. At home in all sorts of areas. He's a very much an Arsenal player. His close control, his ability to operate in tight spaces. He's able to come off the flanks and into the midfield, or into the midfield and then out through the flanks. He's a strong dribbler. He's great on the counter-attack. He showed in the season when he was fully fit, he can get goals and assists, he can arrive late into the box, he can be a super sub, a regular, and all these things. And I personally think if you've got Smith-Rowe stocks, you should keep them. If you haven't bought them, I'd say you buy them. They're going to go up like Bitcoin. You know, they're at the floor. We firmly hit our bottom. Many people have said he needs to go out on loan. Many people have said, should we potentially sell him? I don't agree with that. I think he's an Arteta player, and I think if this man can stay fit, he can be a good problem for Arsenal fans as we talk about starting 11s and key players and whatnot, and he can be a positive headache for Mikel Arteta. As you lot know, I would love personally to sign another midfielder, maybe one that is less so of the ilk of the Thomas Partey's, the Declan Rice's of this world, Jorginho, in terms of the fact that he plays in a 6 and El Nene, maybe someone to go with Havertz that can play as an advanced 8, but maybe Mikel Arteta doesn't feel that way. You've got Fabio Vieira who can play as a 10 and as an 8, and he's another discussion for another video in himself. Kai Havertz is expected to fulfill the void left by Granit Xhaka. Obviously, you know, you've got Zinchenko who can play in midfield. You've got Martin Odegaard. There's many a thing that Mikel Arteta can do according to what the game demands, if it requires more physicality or more creativity. But I think this is a talented player, and we need to remember what he's about, you know. And I cast Arsenal fans' minds back to, if we listen to certain Arsenal fans, completely different. But if we didn't stand behind Martinelli when he had his knee injury, or if you remember a year ago, ironically, in some of the footage you can see in that season when it was really just Saka and Martinelli, Saka and Smith-Rowe, apologies, people were saying Martinelli needed to go on loan. He wouldn't play. Now look where he is. If our certain Arsenal fans had their decisions, you know, Saliba doesn't see eye to eye with the coach and he would have been sold. Some were even saying, I remember a long time ago, people were questioning, is Saka good enough, and saying he's a left back. Form is temporary, class is permanent. If it rains, the sun will shine. And I think Smith-Rowe will be back to his best. Of course, he needs to stay fit. But I think some fans need to cut the man credit. He's had 2 big injuries. He's had surgery. He's been playing with a certain injury since he was 17, 18. Let's hope now the surgery puts an end to that and the man's able to stay fit. If he stays fit like Tomiyasu and a couple of other players, things fall into place. But he's a forgotten hero, man. How can some Arsenal fans forget around Boxing Day of a certain season how him and another certain Haylander came into the team and they brought something? Shameless, but he's a big game player. He scored against Chelsea, he scored against Spurs. Fair enough, that's not necessarily a big club. He bagged from outside the area with his weaker peg against De Gea at Man United. Yes, De Gea was down injured allegedly, but it's a shameless setting. I mean, I'm biased to Smith-Rowe. I've seen the man rise through the academy and I want him to stay, man. I think this guy can play a part of our team. It's not always about regulars. You need depth, you need squad options, and he's firmly an Arsenal player. He's 23 years of age now. His birthday's just gone at the time of making this vid, ironically, but there's so much to like about him. He makes early runs into the box. He arrives late into the box. He can play in certain areas. He's very good at drawing fouls. You know, he's very good on the counter attack. There's so much to love about the guy. As I said, I'm probably the wrong person to speak to about Smith-Rowe, as some of you have seen with my videos, because I'll always defend this guy, rightly so. As you know, if we're sitting here another year and his season kind of follows the one that's just gone, of course we have to have certain conversations. But why should we give up on a man that stood up to be counted when we weren't doing what we was doing, when we were looking for glimmers of hope as Arsenal fans, when we was looking at something to identify with beyond the obvious? This man, along with a number of other players, stood up to be counted and gave us fans something. There's a reason he got the number 10. There's a reason he signed a new deal. Ironically, if worse comes to worse, at least there's a money to make, people. You know, we have to keep things going in this world. But the man's decent, you know, shamelessly. But Arsenal started in South London. He's a South Londoner. So we might as well keep faith with him, man, on a shameless one, really and truly, if I'm completely honest with you. And what I like about him, he's obviously played for England at under 21 level, where they won the Euros and that. and he's got to use that as somewhat a pre-season, if you wish, something to kind of set him up for America and obviously the season. If I had to guess, you know, Smith-Rowe's got to be patient when the next season starts. But as Arteta has shown, if you get a chance, take it. I look at Kyrgios. Now, do I expect Kyrgios to start on a regular basis? Completely going off topic, people. Do I expect him to start week in, week out initially? No. But if you look at Kyrgios taking his chances off the back of Saliba's injury and what he's done in pre-season so far, there might be an occasion for you. If nothing more, these players provide squad depth and potentially sell on assets. Let's not forget, when he was fit, he got called up for England, and maybe had he not been injured, might have represented England at international level where the full national team's concerned. You know, left foot, right foot, technical level. I love the guy, man. I think he's so lit. If it was up to me, him, Saka, Martinelli, Saliba in particular, a couple of others, you'd never leave the football club. I'm not prepared to give up on this guy. I refuse to give up on this guy, and you lot should as well. Now, again, everyone's allowed an opinion, and if you would get rid of Smith-Rowe, maybe sell him and the Ballagans and the Nelsons and the Neddies and reinvest, who am I to tell you things? But I think Havertz, Smith-Rowe, you've got an opportunity to nail down genuine contenders for that 8 position, whether it's the left or the 8. We're going to go over a lot of these things, but if you lot remember, Arteta has played him in a bunch of roles, as you've seen, primarily off the left, at home as a 10. The false 9 experiment didn't work, but if you remember Brighton at home a few years ago, him and Odegaard played either side of Lokonga. Once again, we'll speak about that later on in the video. I don't big up Arteta, but I don't need to tell you lot why, you know, I hold Odegaard and Smith-Rowe in the highest regard. But them two as lone 8s with Lokonga, especially against Brighton and what they were doing and what they've been doing, I don't need to tell you why that wouldn't work out, people. And what I like about him as well, he's starting to become a bit more physically robust. He's starting to shrug players off. He's actually starting to, you know, he's never going to be a man that's going to be notoriously known for scoring headers or anything like that. But he's starting to put his head where it matters. Again, we're going to go over it in the video, but, you know, when Arteta needed the wild cards, in which Smith-Rowe was last season, Reece Nelson, you know, you look at the Bournemouth game, everyone looks at Nelson as the poster boy, and rightly so. But Smith-Rowe got an assist for Thomas Partey. If he doesn't get that goal, what happens? I think Smith-Rowe just needs to keep his confidence. I think he needs to stay fit. And most importantly, I think he needs to take his opportunity in every action in training and any minutes he gets next season, however much that is. And everything else will fall into place. There's a lot of games next season. There's a lot of competition, injuries, suspensions, changing systems and dynamics, loss of form. These are all things that happen with footballers. You know, Smith-Rowe can be forgiven for thinking specifically his Arsenal career has been nothing short of a fairy tale. He's got the number 10, he's doing his thing with Saka, he's been called up to England, he's signed a new deal, he got a new squad number, he's playing week in, week out. He was living the dream for Arsenal. But in a bit like, you know, Martinelli had that heartache of missing a penalty against Sporting Lisbon and also the big knee injury. Saka, you know, we won't mention the penalty in pre-season nor West Ham last season, but the most significant moment of his career being, you know, when he missed a pen for England. Life is great, but sometimes life is hard at the end of the day. It doesn't just go up there. And I think his headspace, despite being 23 years of age, where we'll go over it in the vid, but he needs to arrive now. I think he's of that maturity now to nail down the spot. I say that because I say specific to his Arsenal career, while he's been plagued with injuries, you know, when Arteta sent him on loan initially to Huddersfield, he came back a better player. But he joined Leipzig when he was barely fit, and he moved to a new country and wasn't fit and unable to play. You know, as a footballer, it can be as much as, you know, you're playing on the TV and everyone adores you and you're living the dream, sometimes it can probably be something of isolation. Think about it, people. He really and truly, him and a lot of these players, they can't even take their kids if he has any. I'm sure the galley are DMing him and that. They can't even go and get ice cream and that without being looked at. So while you're adored and a lot of people are looking at you, you never really get a moment to yourself. And as you know, football is about what you're doing, not what you've done. A lot of people have forgotten about Smith-Rowe. Some people that sang all them chants at the Emirates probably were open to selling him. As you know, it can be very lonely being in the injury room, on the best of days, much less consistently. And as he said, he had his first significant surgery. The man's an Arsenal player in everything, you know, in the way he conducts himself, in the way he plays. The man stays fit. It's lit. It's lit, people. I promise. I never lied to you lot on this channel, you know. I've never been one to lie to you lot. And I think even in pre-season, he's looked good. He looked good against Barcelona. We'll say less on the Manchester United game because really and truly, there is nothing to waffle about in a positive aspect in that game. But he looked positive. He looked bright. He looked sharp. And crucially, he's reminding Arteta, yeah, you do your thing with Havertz, you play Rice and Partey, you play Odegaard, you know, Martinelli and Trossard are ahead of me in the pecking order. But when the time comes, remember who the king of the throne was. And again, this ain't, You know, I'm Smith-Rowe FC. I am, but I support Arsenal. Smith-Rowe in the best of form. Trossard in the best of form. Martinelli, Saka, Reece Nelson, you know, in the best of form. These are great problems for Arteta, and ultimately it gives us more options, really. Once again, he's shown he can be a regular, a squad player, a super sub, a changing dynamic, a breath of fresh air. You know, the man's lit. As I keep saying, I'm not going to stop saying, smash the like button, by the way, people. I'm shameless. I'll always back Smith-Rowe. Smith-Rowe can almost do no wrong in my eyes. And I probably am extremely biased. But I know some of you, even the fiercest of Smith-Rowe critics, you could probably say, yo, that YouTube brother's got a point, you know. Matter of the fact, the guy's lit. If you don't carry on being lit, then things need to happen. But I genuinely believe he stays fit, it's lit. And once again, buy your Emile Smith-Rowe stocks, man. Buy your Havertz stocks. Buy your Smith-Rowe stocks. Keep your Saka stocks. Keep your Martinelli stocks. Invest in Saliba, you know. If you're feeling a bit, you know, like you want to take a risk, I wouldn't advertise it right now, but you could feel a little invest in the cheeky Fabio Vieira and that. A lot of people are sleeping on the guy. But we're going off topic. As I said, the guy's lit, man. The guy's lit. He stays fit, we're lit. And I'm not going to stop saying that. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't. The guy's lit, man. So he's Jamaican and that. Again, shameless. Absolutely shameless. We have to keep doing this. Again, people, when you look at Emile Smith-Rowe, there's a lot to like about the individual. And I take you back to when Arsene Wenger said this comment. He said, to be a real football player, you need to be 23 years old, because before you have learned your job, you can have a great game and after sometimes an average game, which is true. As you know, you're a breath of fresh air. As I've said previously, Saka, Martinelli, Saliba, they've all gone what I describe as the honeymoon stage, where they can do no wrong. They're exciting. And then the same fans gassing them up, they start asking questions. As you saw last season towards the tail end, nobody was safe, you know. Nobody was safe. Oh, Saka's falling off, Partey's falling off, Martinelli's falling off, this guy's falling off. This is the day and age of being a footballer. You've got to take the rough with the smooth. You can have one or two exceptional talents. Like at the moment we have, this was obviously Bellerin and Iwobi, lol, exceptional. But the core of the team has to be 23 to 30. If you look at the national teams, you never win a tournament with a young team, because it's more mental at some stage to win something big. You need to have a certain level of experience. Now, the second and third paragraphs are quite irrelevant, but I do wonder, if you look at Manchester City compared to Arsenal in the Premier League, could that have played a part? Now, as some of you can see, obviously, I've showed you various statistics and little bits and pieces in relation to Smith-Rowe, where he's under no illusion, people, if you stop the video and read, you know, that it's a big season for him. You know, his manager, you would have seen some of Mikel Arteta's comments, you know, talking up his ability, but saying by the same token of that, it's about what you're doing now, not what you're doing in the past. And he knows it's a big season. I keep saying it in this video, and I probably sound like a broken record, but for me, he stays fit. Obviously, you stay fit, you're able to be in training, you're able to build up that match sharpness, ultimately that confidence. I do believe many people underestimate confidence in life, let alone football. You know, you look at football, how many players do we see? And again, there's many transferable examples, but how many poor players do we see? But they genuinely believe they're the best thing since sliced bread. And how many times do we hear or we see talented players that are very talented, or we hear, you know, ex-players, pundits say, you know, this player's the bee's knees in training and this, that and the other, but you don't see it on the match. It's confidence. And at the end of the day, this man's a human being. From a lifestyle point of view, this is 23. He's 23. Life is, you know, he wanted to be a footballer, but life is hitting very fast. He's been capped by the country. He's dealt with Arsenal, and let's be honest, you know, Arsenal's one of the biggest clubs in the land, but always talked about, even though it looks like the sun's shining under Mikel Arteta, you know, we're heavily spoken about in a positive light by some outlets, and then they flip it and they attack us really and truly, and the players aren't safe. Can you imagine, in today's day and age, you don't get a switch off? You know, obviously you go back a number of years, yes, you know, players out about in the street, and a man or woman might stop you in the pub or walking down the street and ask you what happened. There's a newspaper, there might be a 5-minute talk on the TV. Now you got social media, you got YouTubers, hint, you've got all sorts of things. You got people that are able to DM players. Life has hit the man fast. But in the same way, you know, in good times, you know, when things are going, when everything in your life is going great for you, it's not that you should think negatively, but you should keep your feet on the ground and keep working and recognize that tougher days are to come. Equally, when there's every reason to give up in this life, people, you got to think about that one reason to keep going. And that's because you're living your dream. For some of us that are people, form is temporary, class is permanent. And I genuinely believe Smith-Rowe will get his opportunities next season to do exactly that. Now, the key thing for Emile Smith-Rowe is to stay fit. By now, you might have seen on, various statistics on this video in relation to the games he's played for Arsenal and many things like that. I've also added in quick little mess abouts online of various ways he could tie into the team with some of our new signings / existing current players, people. And you also would have seen, first the Google image and then actually, my tactics thing as to what actually happened when, we played Brighton at the Emirates and it did not work out for us with Lokonga in the lone 6 and 2 rotating 8s of Odegaard and Smith-Rowe. I said it at the time, I liked the idea from Arteta. I just think the personnel at the time was wrong. I think Odegaard still need to learn 1-2 things. The same goes for Smith-Rowe. The less said about Lokonga, the better. But now we've actually got that legitimate option of 2 rotating 8s and a 6 with a Partey, Declan Rice or Jorginho and the Havertz, the Odegaards, the Smith-Rowes and probably a bunch of players, Fabio Vieira as well, which should be one for another video. The bottom line is Smith-Rowe FC. I'm with the guy to the definite. I'm with the guy to the end. Same way with Saka. Same way with a lot of players. I know you shouldn't be biased. I know you should be fair, which I tried to be. But we're in football because this sport and this club has captured our heart. And at the end of the day, I like Smith-Rowe, so I'm always going to cut almost every excuse. But don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on Smith-Rowe. Do you think he'll have a good season? Do you think he'll have a bad season? Would you get rid of him? Would you loan him out? Which I wouldn't loan him out, but if a team, for example, said, you know what, boom, you can play 20-30 Premier League games for us, he could get fit, he could become a talking point. There's also the element of potentially selling him or returning to Arsenal. It is what it is, but I'm standing by him because when we was in the trenches on that fatal Boxing Day, you played a massive part of our season where I'm not happy that we finished 5th, of course, people, but it was looking lit for a sec. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on Emile Smith-Rowe. Check out the rest of the tactical videos. One love for tuning in. I'm out.